It's the Jack and Joe Show. Welcome along to the show. Thank you so much for listening and for watching on YouTube as well, listening on the podcast as well on Spotify. I am joined by my partner in crime, a man who this week my brother told me he has his tweet notifications turned on for, Joe Sansom.
Wow.
Why is that?
I don't even know. It's as if he wants his dose of negativity just plugged into his bloodstream, potentially. No, I'm all good, but Jack, people might be noticing, if you are watching rather than listening, to those that aren't, I'll just describe, Jack has got a different background today. Ooh. Why is that?
Yeah, I might be in the island of Portugal. Or wow. Should I just say Portugal?
I don't think people know what that is.
Yeah, I was about to say Isle of Fernando, which is like a Take Me Out reference, but completely pointless. World's biggest secret. I'm in Portugal a couple of days too late after we played a friendly against Nottingham Forest on Saturday. But I am finally here, and it is time to do some digging, because literally arrived and I was quite overwhelmed with... when I was trying to check out in terms of passport and stuff, I got news about Devin Tantum getting injured, which was terrible news. I then got a phone call, someone offering me more work, which is fantastic, but like a very weird situation where you're sort of being offered all this like stuff, and then you're trying to weave your way through all the queues and stuff. And then literally got to this very B&B, sat down and received a call about something, and then also about to leave to go out for lunch, and then Adama Traore. So I mean, it basically all happened within the space of about an hour. It's calmed down since then, and today is Tuesday, and hopefully we get some more news, some positive news. Joe, we've got quite a lot to talk about today. Do you want to kick us off and go with, well, where do we start?
Let's do it. So I think let's start with Saturday. Saturday we had two main bits of news, really, because we had the Reece Nelson tweet by David Ornstein, which broke sort of late afternoon. For anyone that hasn't seen it, it was basically just saying that Fulham are in advanced talks for Nelson, and then he basically explained every single possible type of deal that we could do, which would be a loan with an option, a loan with an obligation, a permanent deal. So quite rarely, David Ornstein, who we both sort of hold as the high esteemed, best football journalist in the game, it didn't actually add much, but what it did add was the most reliable Arsenal voice on the situation, which at least means we seem to be close. Jumping ahead to Sunday, Nelson wasn't involved in Arsenal's friendly against Newcastle. He was one of only two senior outfield players that didn't play a single minute, and the other one is Albert Samuel Lokonga, who's very publicly going to be leaving as well, just a matter of finding a club for him. He's not in the plans. So that's a good sign, because obviously previously in their other friendly against Milan, I think it was, he had come on for about 10, 15 minutes off the bench, had a good cameo, had a penalty saved in the shootout, which is obviously quite typical for any sort of Fulham linky. But nothing's really seemed to have moved publicly on the Nelson situation, but we would think that this would be the next one through the door. We also had the confirmation of Benjamin Lecomte signing on Saturday just before that, which I forgot to mention, because we'd sort of seen pictures of him circulating from the Friday night through Calvin Bassey's extortionately fined Snapchat story after all the sort of behind the scenes stuff got culled by Fulham. But anyway, that's good news. We've got a backup goalkeeper. I sort of facetiously tweeted last night that it's going to be August on Friday, and we've only signed a backup goalkeeper. And I've received a few replies telling me to sort of get my head sorted out. And there's a few things I would say to that. I mean, firstly, kind of get the point about we haven't lost many players. We had this debate last week. I won't go into it again. We've got a strong team. My annoyance is that we haven't pushed on. And I think that we could have pushed on, and I don't think that that's asking for much. What I would say is that the team that we did have last season played very, very well on Saturday night. I was streaming the game, the first half, obviously against a very inexperienced Nottingham Forest team. There's quite a lot of young players involved and a few fringe players. Even so, it was complete and utter domination, played really, really well. And then the second half, they brought on all their big guns, including obviously Gibbs White, who was held hostage on the pitch after the game. So that was interesting, because we were playing some more of our sort of fringe players against their starting 11, and did really well. Scored a lovely third goal through Andreas Pereira from a lovely team move, and then unfortunately Wood scored down the other end. But I was very happy with what I saw, because obviously the other two friendlies have been behind closed doors. Jack, the West Brom one and the Aberdeen one, we haven't seen any of the goals. It was also the first chance to get a look at the new kit. So I felt a bit more positive after seeing that. I'm still frustrated with the transfer business, but it was easy to forget that we have got a good team. Josh King played fantastically well, which was wonderful to see. Would have been great to see Seth Ridgen off the bench, but we did see a few of the other young players, such as Asenga, and a couple of others. So that was really great. But yeah, it's an interesting one now, Jeff, because obviously we've got another friendly in a couple of days. There's the Frankfurt one in a couple of weeks. You imagine there's got to be something in between, because there's a 2-week gap. What are you hoping for now in terms of personnel coming in, as in a time frame? When do you think is useful for them to be involved? I mean, an example I'll give you, would you be happy with a player coming in, playing or being involved in that Frankfurt game ahead of the start of the season, or do you feel they need longer?
I think that essentially what we need to do is we need to get in someone by Saturday, and today's Tuesday. So they can have a full week of training with the club, with the team, when they fly back on Friday, and then essentially can be in contention for the game against Frankfurt. And I'm now pinning this on Reece Nelson. I think that this Reece Nelson thing, the day is still young. I don't know what time it is in Singapore. In fact, I think it's late at night, maybe. I'm not sure. I think it might be evening time. But I would like to think that at some point in the next 1, 2, 3 days, we're going to get that. He's on his way back to London, or he's on his way to Portugal. I'd imagine it'd probably now be London. And I think that if he was to sign on the dotted line by Saturday, or even Sunday, he got 5 days of training, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, before the Frankfurt game, where I imagine he would, because he has featured for Arsenal, so he's not like unfit or anything like that. I think he could basically come on. I mean, he's basically had full pre-season in terms of training and getting back up to sharpness with Arsenal, which is beneficial. Played 10 minutes against AC Milan. And then essentially, I'm guessing we'll play Frankfurt, and we'll probably play Wilson on one side, Iwobi on the other, maybe Cess, who knows, maybe Traore, if he's still here. And then Nelson could come on for 10, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And I think that's fine. And then I personally, with another week to go, I think going to Brighton with another full week of training, I think he'd be ready to be in contention to play in the game. It's just about, can we, and that's the frustration is, can we just get it done so that he can have those sort of time frames, so he can have that sort of structure. Because if he's coming in the Wednesday before the Frankfurt game, or the Wednesday before the Brighton game, God forbid, that's not enough time for me to be like, oh, you're going to be a shoo-in on the bench. And again, it just sort of kicks the can down the road, and it makes you think, okay, well, he'll be back for Man United, or he'll be back for Chelsea. I mean, it's just like, this was a target we basically knew about all summer. So I'd like to see him at least play the first game of the season, or at least be involved in the first game of the season, especially with those obligations and those options and whatever clauses are in the contract when it comes to the actual deal. But if we were to see Reece Nelson on the Craven Cottage pitch for 25 minutes against Frankfurt, I'd be a happy boy. But I want more. I keep sending you that famous Noel Gallagher GIF or whatever interview where he wins. Someone says how much money he's got. Someone says how much he's won. And he said, I want more. And that's basically what I want. And a lot of every Fulham fan wants. They want more.
But you're right. You're 100% right to want more, because even if we sign Nelson, which I think would be a good signing, I think he'd be a good addition to our squad. I'd really like to see him back. I've wanted him back all summer. And I hope that it's a deal where there's at least an option to make it permanent, and that he gets lucky with injuries this time. But again, it's a player that we had in our squad last season. And it's one of these things where, we need more than that, because I feel that I was very frustrated for large portions of last season, as were a lot of fans, with our attacking quality or lack of. that didn't all coincide with when Nelson was fit, by the way, just to put that into perspective. A lot of that was in the second half of the season. But so we need improvements. I'm happy with our squad. We've got a good squad. We did have a good enough squad to push on to a level that we didn't last season. And adding Reece Nelson back into that team is great. It's a good winger option. He's different to what we've currently got. He's direct. He's a little bit more exciting. He made Smith Rowe and Iwobi play better when he was in the team. They look like a great trio, in fact. But at the same time, he's not someone that is suddenly he's not going to move the needle versus where we were last season. And that's what I think myself and you, Jack, are both really hoping for on the other wing, because it feels like on the left wing, Nelson is the name and we've got Iwobi there already. I very much doubt if we sign Nelson, we're getting anyone else on that side. On the right-hand side, especially when you factor in these Adama Traore rumours that you just alluded to with John Percy, is there an option there? That sounds like sort of the position that we might need to fill next.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The Traore situation is actually very, very awkward because it would add another name and another position to our already sort of pressing list of players we need to get in. And that would be losing it to a Premier League rival. I'd imagine now they've signed Ndoye, it might cool the interest, or they're going to sign Ndoye as of basically yesterday. Fulham are basically, when they say have entered talks, from what I've heard, when they say they've entered talks, they've essentially had a conversation. The two clubs have had a conversation about the situation, but there is no way that Fulham are going to sanction this deal unless Forest pay what we demand. And I think what we demand will be a bit of a turn-off for Nottingham Forest, depending on how desperate they want him. At this current stage, I can see Traore staying at Fulham. And I would be quite surprised if Forest stump up the money at this moment in time for him. I'd be then quite surprised if we let him go, because it would. If this was like 4 weeks ago, I'd be a little bit more like, well, okay, we've got time. But like I just said, to add another player to the list just makes me feel incredibly nervous, and then would leave us incredibly short on wide areas with the Brighton game on the horizon. It's very, very close now, really. I don't think this is a goer yet. Let's just see how Forest react and go for the next couple of days. They'll focus on Ndoye, and then they might turn their attentions back to Traore. I think that Fulham are going to be very stubborn. I think Silva will probably be in someone's ear saying, we can't sanction this because where are my replacements? There's no sign of you bringing in my replacements as of yet, or anyone. So, this one will be a slow burner for sure, I believe. We had the news about Luc de Fuggerals going to Dender, or moving closer to a move to the Belgian Pro League, which I think is a very, very positive move for him.
The 25-26 season is shaping up to be a big one for Fulham, and one thing you need ahead of it is NordVPN, the fastest VPN on the planet that allows you to watch football matches from wherever you are in the world, on either your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. For instance, you could use NordVPN to watch Premier League matches for a fraction of the price, including those 3 p.m. kickoffs that aren't available in this country. Or if you go on holiday this summer, you can use NordVPN to access your UK TV subscriptions. And right now, you can use NordVPN on up to 10 devices, which means you can share the amazing benefits that NordVPN has with your family or your friends. And you can get a great deal when you sign up to NordVPN at nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. Not only will you get a huge discount, but you'll also get 4 months extra as well. And it's entirely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So to get that special discount plus 4 free months, go to nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. That's nordvpn.com/Fulhamish.
I spoke yesterday actually about how everyone was like, well, why isn't he going to the Championship? That's what we all expected. But actually, I do think that if he's in the Championship, the spotlight's on him a little bit more, which actually adds a little bit of pressure. I think that the Championship is a very tribal league with lots of finger pointing, and people love to jump on people when they make mistakes in the Championship, because there's a very young generation of football fans who follow their teams in the Championship. Lots of memes get made and blah, blah, blah. And I think if Luc de Fuggerals made a mistake or two, there'd be some finger pointing. Whereas the Belgian Pro League is very much out of my sort of spectrum of where I sort of watch football. Out of a lot of people who watch it as well. So he can sort of just get on with it. And Canadian players have a very good track record of playing in the Belgian Pro League. And ahead of the World Cup, I think this the club that are going to play him, or at least the club of Fulham are going to make sure that he gets enough minutes to satisfy them and to satisfy Luc de Fuggerol's. I think it's a great loan move. But in terms of going back to Traore, I think a slow burner, and hopefully we hold firm, because we really actually can't afford to lose him. And he's such a unique player in what he offers as well. I don't want to lose that, because he always could offer something, and that's good.
I certainly wouldn't love to sell him to Forest if we are going to sell him. I'd like to sell him abroad if we're going to. I mean, I don't see there's been any public interest there, but a couple of reasons that I think it could happen, I'm not saying it will happen, but could happen, is the Nuno angle. And if Traore wants to play under Nuno again, the added factor that he's got a year left on his deal, I don't know if we'll be extending that. And you imagine that Forest are the sort of team where they could probably offer him a sort of longer term thing, just based on the fact that anything seems to be in play there in terms of contract negotiations and signings and things like that. It all seems a little bit ropey to me from a numbers perspective. I think that he's a profile, like you say, that I wouldn't particularly like to lose, in terms of he's something a little bit different to any of our other players. And he's one of the most unpredictable players in the league. Sometimes, people have joked and said he doesn't even know what he's going to do next. I think that's always been a little bit harsh. But ultimately, it's the size and the speed makes him unpredictable. If you said to me, we'll sign a replacement, I'd let him go. I'll be honest with you. And the reason for that is based on the fact that it's pure profit. We signed him for free. Mm-hmm. We could lose him for free in the summer otherwise. But I would want the replacement to be, again, a needle mover on the right wing. I'm not asking for a player that's, he's all right, he's okay. No, I want a first team starting right winger, which would push Wilson to the backup, which I think would maybe be a bit unfortunate for him. But ultimately, if we want to push on, I think that's the solution here. Now, a right winger that we have been linked with, Jack, is Raheem Sterling. And this was actually reiterated by The Athletic today as confirming that we have some interest. Now, what do I think about this? Well, I think that my initial reaction, by default, seeing the name Raheem Sterling, was, I'm not sure about that, based on last season at Arsenal. And I thought about it, and I thought about it a bit more, and I thought, actually, he didn't have a great season for Arsenal. That is a fact. That cannot be denied. But that's probably the only poor season he's had for years. And I did the numbers, and as you saw on my Twitter, in terms of all competitions, the only season where he hasn't reached double figures, again, in all competitions, so forgive the Europa League, Conference League, any cups, etc., was last season, and that was since 2013. So he is a consistent goal scorer. He is a class above some of the other players we have on his day, and he is only 30. I say only 30 because I thought he was a lot older than that. He could have another 5 years at the top level if he wanted to. We remember the reaction from us and everyone when Willian was linked. And look, Willian had an absolutely terrible time at Arsenal as well. You have to remember that expectations are different at different clubs. Pressures are different for different things. Teammates can gel. Players can just not enjoy it with the manager. Anything could happen. And if one or two of these things goes against that player, then they could have a shocking spell at a team. Ultimately, I think that Sterling, it wasn't that long ago that he was tearing it up for England. It wasn't that long ago that he was tearing up for Chelsea. When he first joined them, he was looking good there. He sort of got back into a little bit of form after his time at City. I'd be open to this, but the deal has to be right, because I think the wages will be astronomical. I don't know how much they charge for a permanent deal. I think The Athletic said something today like 20 million, and I can't see us sanctioning any sort of deal like that. If it could be a loan with some of the wages covered and we pay maybe a loan fee, something like that, with an option to buy, I think this is something worth exploring, Jack. And I know you're big into your England football, so you'll have seen Sterling a lot of times over the years. I know a lot of people dislike him based on the fact that he played for Chelsea, which I understand, even the fact he played for Liverpool, which I also understand. Some people might even dislike that he played for City or Arsenal. Ultimately, I think this would be an okay signing. Would he be the needle mover that I mentioned before? That I'm not so sure. And if we're signing Nelson and Sterling, would I be slightly underwhelmed at our wing options? Probably. I don't know if you agree.
I've been really torn on this. And in fact, when people have asked me about Raheem Sterling, what do I think? I've basically given them an answer without really thinking about it. And it's because I sort of lost interest in Raheem Sterling's career when he went to Chelsea. I just thought, I can't believe he's gone to Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. He actually did very, very well. I remember that. I do remember watching that Friday night game against Luton Town quite early on in the Premier League season, 23-24. And he did very well. I think he scored 2 goals in a 3-0 win or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Apart from that, I just didn't pay much attention to Sterling. What I will say is when he broke through at Liverpool in that 13-14 season, or sort of around that time, or the season that they were going for the title and they, you know, Christian Ball and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was one of the most exciting, or most excited I've been about a young player to watch ever. I mentioned Dele Alli a couple of weeks ago on one of my live streams, but Sterling with Suarez and Sturridge, it was actually quite incredible how exciting that was. And Coutinho as well. I always remember that game against Man City where he scored that amazing goal where he sort of dummied away from one and sort of just easily put it into the back of the empty net because of his movement. And look, he's had quite a goal scorer for Man City. Raheem Sterling with a little tap in from 6 yards out. Like, you look at all his goals for Man City, apart from one very, very good curling goal against Southampton in the last minute a few years ago, most of them are from inside the 6 yard box, or at least inside the penalty box. But that's just the way City play. He went to Chelsea and I just thought, okay, I just don't care enough about this now. And then he went to Arsenal and again, like, didn't really see much or hear much from him last season. It feels very Fulham. It does.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like you mentioned the Willian deal and I got the exact same feelings. I was like, oh, wow, really? And I was actually like, and then I saw your tweet. It was about, he's only had, whatever you tweeted. I remember you mentioned it earlier, but I was like, oh, maybe this could work. The only issue I have with it is we know, because of what's been reported, that this is going to be a last minute deal. So it's essentially is, do we have other targets in front of Sterling? If so, who are they? How much are we willing to pay? And are they as you say, needle mover compared to Raheem Sterling? Because it feels like a last chance saloon, sort of last option, deadline day sort of thing. I'd be fairly pleased to sign him because I think there's something he can give for us there. And he's a goal scorer, and what we need is a goal scoring winger. But it would feel as if the ambition that we may have internally to sign someone with a little bit more European pedigree, a little bit more stardust, a little bit more of a younger profile of player, if that falls flat, then suddenly Sterling comes an option. And I'd like us to go hard on a winger. I really would like to go as not these sorts of, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but it feels like Nelson is the safer option. Even though the board don't necessarily agree that we should sign him because of his injury record, it's a safe option because we had him last season. Albeit, I would like to sign Reece Nelson. I want to re-sign Reece Nelson. Raheem Sterling, safe option. Ori in London, okay, his wages are a bit of a stumbling block, but we can negotiate that down. But it feels as like, they're just very local and they can just sort of pop over from 3 miles down the road. Dewsbury Hall, I think, is a different one because I think he's actually a player who can really add something to our team. The only issue I have with Dewsbury Hall is I really don't want that to undermine the fact that King's just signed a 4-year deal and looking very, very good. And I think that if that stifles his game time, I'd say no, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. And I just want us to, could you just imagine, I just want to see like an Ornstein or a Fabrizio Romano just go, Fulham have submitted a 35 million bid for said, I don't know, Harvey Barnes or just for someone like Ndoye was the exact sort of player that we should be after.
Yeah, exciting winger.
Yeah, and obviously that was to replace Elanga, so I can understand that. But also we need to replace Willian.
Yeah. And
just because Willian was 35 doesn't mean we need to go, well, Raheem Sterling is 30, so maybe that's a good replacement. Why don't you go for a 23, 24-year-old who's got, on a 5-year deal, who's got, speed and excitement. And I know it's a hard market and it's going to cost a lot of money and we have a certain budget, but we need to be, and I know we are. I know we're going to be looking at players I think we're going to go big on players. I think we will go big on players, but let's see it. Who are they? Who are these players that we're tracking? I'd like to see us go hard on a winger. And if it doesn't work out and Sterling comes in, then fair play. That seems to be, that seems to be the direction it's going in. It's basically Sterling is that sort of last week of the window. He's still waiting around. And if he's waiting around for Fulham, he gets another offer and goes to Napoli. Like, imagine if he does go to Napoli and suddenly we're like, well, our backup's gone. Now what do we do? Do we get Willian back for another season? So it's a risky game. It's a risky game.
It's one of these things where I'm looking at the targets we're linked with right now, and individually, I'm fine with all of them. But overall, if you said to me, for example, and this, I don't think this would be the case, but let's say, for example, we get Nelson, we get Sterling, we get Dewsbury Hall, we've already signed Benjamin Lecomte. If you then ask me, am I happy with that window? I'd say no, not remotely. And I'm trying to think back to what I expected at the end of last season, what Silva probably expected in terms of pushing on to that next level. Do I think Dewsbury Hall could do that? Yes. In midfield, I think he's someone that could actually come in and make sure that our midfield there's more goals from it. A little bit younger, so someone that could actually bed into our team for years to come. And loved watching him when he was at Leicester, especially in that Championship season. Really exciting player. Obviously hasn't had all the opportunities. I don't think Chelsea was the wisest move, but it's easy to say that before they just take another few midfielders off the shelves in the weeks after signing him. It's just one of these things that they do. Probably the same way Liam Delap felt this summer when they suddenly then went and signed João Pedro, and he's like, what have I done? Sterling, again, fine. Nelson, fine. But there's no winger signing there that makes me think, okay, we're taking us to the next level. I've got a terrible feeling if those were our wingers and that was it, then we're in a similar position next summer where either we have Nelson and that's great, or Nelson has maybe had a few injury issues or not impressed and we haven't taken up the option. And Sterling on the other side is suddenly 31, maybe approaching 32. And we're thinking, okay, we probably now need to get a right winger. And we're in the same position as we were this year. It's just one of these things. I still think we need another forward. One thing that was brought to my attention the other night was I think we potentially need a left-back cover. I think that Asenga is a very promising young left-back, but I would probably like to see him go out on loan, get some football. I don't think that really filling in 10 minutes here or there really helps. And I don't think he's ready to start in the Premier League either if Robinson was unavailable. I still don't think Sessegnon should be playing there. I don't like Castagna playing on that side because he's right-footed. I don't want Bassi shoehorned over there. So I want a left-back, and I feel like that could be a cheap deal, cheap and cheerful, just get someone in that can cover. And then after that, I think we could potentially be done, but it all depends on outgoings. Andreas Pereira played okay the other night, got a goal. Harrison Reed also did okay. Now that Elite Fougerolles is going out on loan, which probably means that Cuenca and Diop are just sort of set in stone, staying as the initial backups for both positions. But I want to see some more movement in the transfer market. It's been very slow. And I've been frustrated by it. And I understand your point on we'll probably try and sign a few sort of like marquee style signings. And for that, we might have to be more patient. And I fully appreciate that that's the nature of it. Sometimes we're trying to target ambitious players that maybe aren't available right now or unwilling to come right now because they're weighing up their options. That being said, there's gaps that we could fill. We've just seen one with Benjamin Lecomte, and none of us had even heard of any rumours of the deal a few days before he actually officially signed. And I hope there's things like that going on, because ultimately I think that we've got a good squad, but we don't have a great squad. And time and time again last season, we saw what happened. If our squad dropped below a sort of 7 out of 10 performance, we could get battered by teams like Crystal Palace, like Wolves at home. There's just these games when that happened. And that is ultimately because the team we've got is good, but not great. And if you want to push it to the next level, it's got to be great. And we need to add some more star quality.
Okay, that's going to be it from us today. Hopefully we see something happen in the next week or so. What I will say is there's a name and there's a player who I think that Fulham are still looking at doing a deal with, and it's basically whether we can get there ahead of another certain Premier League team, and that's a certain Portuguese central defensive midfielder who may have been here at the club before and may have gone to a certain German giant and maybe looking to weed his way back into the Premier League before the World Cup. I think that name is going to come up again, and I think that Fulham will be linked with Zapolenia yet again, which will be exciting. And what was I going to say? Yeah, so the friendly against Forest, great result, great performance. Al Ittihad tomorrow, looking forward to at least watching it on a stream and seeing how Fulham do there. And then, of course, we then fly home and then we'll see what happens from there. Joe, I don't know. I've come out of this one. I came out of last week thinking, oh, okay, I'm pretty positive. This week it's more like, mixed feelings.
Yeah, I mean, look, nothing bad has happened. We had a great friendly result, and I'd certainly be more optimistic about our chances this coming season than Forest right now. If I was them, I know they're signing Ndoye, but even then, I thought we looked good. We had better squad depth. It's just about pushing on to the next level, and I really hope that we can start to make some moves to show that, because I think that if we could, we've got a really good chance of finishing higher in the league this season and pushing towards Europe because of what has happened to some of those teams around us. People use that as a sort of a rebuttal when I complain about the transfer business. I think it backs up my point even more. There is an opportunity here to take advantage of potentially the middle of the league being weaker next season and really trying to make sure that we get ahead of those teams rather than just sort of being like, oh, well, Brentford lost a few players, so let's just stay how we are, which I hate that mentality.
Yeah, I made that sort of point yesterday about how lots of Premier League teams have had terrible summers. A lot of them have, but that's no excuse for Fulham to be like, well, we're fine then. No, we cannot stand still. Thanks so much for watching, Joe. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for listening as well on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching and listening, and catch you soon.